Hey, with 2019 coming to an end, I decided to make a list of my favorite tech that I've used this year. It doesn't even necessarily mean tech that came out this year, but the tech that I've used for the past 365 days that I've enjoyed the most using. And the first item on that list is the lens that I'm using right now on this camera. That is the Sigma 35mm f1.4 prime for the Sony E-mount. Last year I've bought this lens and used it for the better part of the year 2018 with a lot of different problems. It has probably the best image that I've ever had on any lens. I've had small tiny primes that I've used with an adapter on my camera. They were just manual focus and they were okay and cheap, different focus lengths, and I had come to the conclusion that this Sigma was gonna have to be sold as soon as possible because it's quite the expensive lens and the autofocus was just bad. I tried to record these types of videos with this lens on the past and the background just constantly just wobbled in and out of focus and it was borderline distracting. So I went ahead and bought this, which is the Tamron 28-75 zoom lens f2.8. It was great to use, but for some reason I always thought that my ideal setup with just two lenses would be the Sigma 35 1.4 and this Sony 85 1.8 that is just great. And the two of them just complement each other. I may need something a little wider sometimes, but most of the times I would do great with just these two lenses. But when I got to Tamron, it has a lot of similar focus lengths from these two lenses. So I was on the verge of selling the Sigma and the Sony. But out of nowhere, on June or July this year, Sigma released a firmware update for the Sigma 1.4 35mm and the autofocus is great. It's not the fastest, but it is consistent, as you can see by the bokeh in the background. It is good, it works, and it made me really happy, and now I will probably sell the Tamron instead of the Sigma. Now, the second item on my list, I would have to give to my Sennheiser HD6XX. If you follow my channel at all, I really talk about these guys a lot. They are probably one of my favorite pieces of technology ever. I got them on mass drop, I think 2.5 years ago. I enjoyed them like I received them yesterday. They are the exact same headphone as the Sennheiser HD650s that usually retail for around 500 euros. But these are special in a lot of different ways, and this year was the year that I finally noticed in person what these actually sound like. For the longest time I've been a fan of Hans Zimmer and his music in general, and this year I got to hear a concert with the entire orchestra live, and if I closed my eyes I would be pretty much just back at my place listening to the orchestra on these. I would say that they sound about 90 or 85% as good as the real thing live, which is impressive. And being there and listening to all that music that I've been hearing for years on movies and just basically just playing on repeat the soundtracks was definitely a special thing. And if you can watch the orchestra live, it is definitely a good experience. And if you go on mass drop or drop like they're called these days and you find these going for sale for about 200-250 euros, just don't hesitate and do yourself a favor and grab a pair of one of these. Get a good amplifier that has enough power to power these and you'll have a joyous time. They are definitely a special pair of headphones. Now, the next item on my list, I would have to give it to the Apple Watch Series 4. Not the Series 5, the Series 4. This year I just skipped the Series 5. A lot of people found the always on display to be a major new feature, and for me, I'm not in a situation very frequently where I need to watch my watch and don't want to be that guy that just flips the wrist to look at it. I don't know, I just don't think about that too often. And listening to people talk about battery life and how it is slightly worse compared to the Series 4 on the Series 5, it was a major deterrent for me to purchase the Series 5. And you could probably ask my girlfriend how insane I am about battery life. It's problematic, I think. But the Series 4 still manages to stay completely up to date with everything that Apple is doing in the watch front. It has the exact same internals as the Series 5, and it does exactly the same thing as it has been doing for me for the past year. This marks the second year in a row that I've used the Apple Watch every single day, and it has completely changed a lot of small things that I do in my day-to-day life. Going for a run with just my watch and a pair of headphones is great, and mostly just enhancing activities that I would do every day and giving me more data and more feedback on how I'm doing them. For example, you can go on the App Store and purchase the app Auto Sleep, and with Auto Sleep you can track your sleep like many other different wearables do, and it has a lot of different graphs and a lot of different info about your sleep, and you can complement it with the Auto Wake app that uses all that data to make sure that your alarm clock is set at the exact correct phase of the sleep that you're in. It buzzes your wrist ever so slightly to bring you out of deeper states of sleep. And small things like that I've come to really appreciate with the Apple Watch. It's the entire app ecosystem and the hardware that complement each other gratefully. And please, please, please Google, just make a proper smartwatch. Just do it. I don't want a Huawei watch or a Samsung watch. I generally don't enjoy their current offerings, but if you did it correctly, you can make damn well sure that I would give Android phones a try again, as I've done in the past, because the biggest thing keeping me using an iPhone is the Apple Watch, by far. It is my favorite piece of tech that I've used this year, in my number 3 on my list. Number 4, I would have to say that it is my current keyboard, which is the Razer Huntsman Elite. Ever since I've started using mechanical keyboards, which go back about 5 years ago, I've always used linear switches, mostly Cherry MX Reds, but this year I went for a slightly different keyboard, and with that, clickier switches like the Razer Optomechanical Clicky switch, and it has been a joy to use. There's that weird time when you get a new mechanical keyboard and you just want to try it out and just type away random stuff, and you always search for different things to type. It's a weird phase, but with this keyboard I always try to type as much as I can sitting on this desk on this keyboard. It is a joy to type on, and Razer announced and launched at the end of this year a new PBT plastic keycaps that are supposed to bring a slightly higher quality plastic to the keycaps that offer greater longevity. You have backlit secondary keys. There was a big problem with this keyboard if you type at night and you want to just type that weird symbol that you never use and it is dark and the RGB doesn't shine through that key. With the PBT caps they do, and they just look great with a grippy texture at the top of the keycap, and they don't tend to get as slimy and as slick as normal ABT plastic keycaps do, which is a good thing. Plus, the font on the keycaps looks pretty similar to the one that I currently have on the default keycaps, so that's a plus. And finally, the last item on my list, I would have to give it to my current favorite pair of running shoes. I know, it's a running shoe. If it doesn't tie itself, it's not tech related, but it always makes me feel fascinated when I find different evolutions in running shoes and how that technology impacts like top level athletes. I'm not a top level athlete, but for the past 2-3 years, Nike has been completely dominating the marathon and half marathon shoe game with their new design with a carbon fiber midsole, and that has completely changed the standard for this type of shoe. You will never run faster just because of your shoes, but if you're already pushing your limits, the shoe can give you a slight edge. But I have to admit that with my pink Nathan Bell drawn Nike running shoes for the past year, I've beat every single record that I had for both half marathon, 10 kilometer, 5 kilometer, 8 kilometer, and they have been a joy to use. Now, I tend to not running these every day because they are not the most durable material, but for races they are great, and it's pretty much just like running on small tiny springs, and they look fun and they make me smile when I run on them, and I go really fast. Now, if you're starting to run now, do not buy this pair of shoe. I think they're made to run with a more forward-leaning position, and usually when people start to run, they can't run very leaning forward because their legs don't go as fast. But after a while, I think they are great for a lot of people, and they give you a slight advantage when it comes to like the force that they give back from you with every step. So yes, that will have to be my number 5 pick on the list. So yeah, for the past year I've used a lot of stuff. These are my 5 favorites by far, and I hope you enjoyed watching this tiny list. Hopefully 2020 will be filled with more products and more reviews and more enjoyable things in this channel. I know I haven't been the most consistent channel possible, but I'm getting there, slow and steady. I'm getting there, and I'll see you on the next decade because that's happening. Hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe, click the bell thingy, that's always good. And bye.